May 7th, 1863. My dear Catherine, I again take the privilege of writing you a few lines for your perusal. Since I last wrote to you, we have been moving about a great deal. On the 29th of April, we left Young's Point and went to the Yazoo River to a place called Haynes Bluff. There were about 6,000 of us and 8 gunboats. This move was made to draw as many rebels from before Grant's army at Carthage so that he could go on with his intended movements. We arrived at Bluffs at sundown. Early the next morning, our gunboats commenced shelling the rebel forts and succeeded in driving them from their batteries. One of our gunboats was struck 53 times, but no damage was done. In the evening, the 30th was ordered to move forward so as to make the Rebs think we were going to make a charge on their works. The Rebs seen us coming, and they flew to their batteries in a minute, and the first thing we knew was a shell among us, but it done no harm. The gunboats again opened on them and soon drove them from their guns. We were ordered to stay all night under the mouths of the enemy's guns, and in the night we could hear them hauling cannons and planting them along the line. But they did not molest us until after dinner the next day. We then saw long lines of infantry marching and taking up their position in battle array, and the gunners getting in their places. We knew that they were about to commence on us. We also knew that they had been reinforced by about 15,000 during the night before, which is just what we wanted. We were ordered to fall back behind the river bank so as to be out of danger, for the gunboats was going to open on them again. They soon commenced, and the Rebs only fired 12 shots before they had to leave their batteries. We could see them carrying of men that were either dead or wounded. Our boats then began to shell the rebel infantry, and I never saw such a scampering in my life. They ran in every direction, and we saw them carrying off dead or wounded from there, and in less than 3 hours there was not a Reb to be seen. We stayed along the lines until after dark, when we got on the boats and sailed for Young's Point, and arrived there about 11 o'clock in the night. We had no one hurt, although we had a great many shots fired at us. The Rebs cannot say this. The next morning, after our return, being the 2nd of May, we left Young's Point and came up the river to Milliken's Bend, and stayed there a couple of days, and then left Milliken's Bend and came out in the country about 9 miles from the river. We are now guarding the road that leads to Grant's army from the bushwhackers, for they were about to cut off his supplies. We are now by ourselves, our regiment, and we are camped in a very nice little grove with very green sod, and we all feel very happy and well contented. We have nothing to do, only to guard the road and be in the shade, which suits a lazy soldier's life. Corn is now 2 feet high, and blackberries are ripe, and so is mulberries. We will be plenty of roasting ears in June, and peaches will be ripe about the 25th of June. This is the most beautiful country in the world. The land is level as far as the eye can see, and everything looks as flourishing here now as what produce does in your country in July. I am much taken with this part of the world, and I have almost come to the conclusion that if I ever live to get out of the army, to live the balance of my days out in the South. I must close my letter for the present, hoping this will find you as well as your kind letter found me. It was dated and believed the 24th April. Write soon and direct as before, and forward to regiment. This from your lover, E.J. Allton. Catharine Shick, farewell. So this letter, which is one of the longer ones that Erasmus wrote back to Catherine, takes great detail in describing the Battle of Haynes Bluff, also known as the Battle of Snyder's Bluff, which ended up being an extremely important battle within the larger theater of the Vicksburg campaign. It takes place along the Yazoo River, and there are just a whole bunch of details between the gunboats and how many shots were fired and wounded soldiers being carried off that really aren't found in a lot of his other letters, which might focus more on his relationship with Catherine. He also describes his love for the South and his plans of maybe returning to the South after leaving the war if he were to survive. He does end up surviving, and he ends up following Catherine and going back to Ohio. But it's interesting to see him describe these other plans, and it might show how the war is somewhat changing his mentalities. And finally, there's a lot in here that alludes to the 30th Regiment and the incredible amount of travel that they did throughout the war. He describes them on the river, 9 miles off the river, guarding a road, over at Milliken's Bend, and even at Young's Point, all within about a 7-day stretch. And overall, there's clear evidence that the 30th Regiment at least traveled 10,000 miles across the country during their time in the war, and this is a great testament to that.